New Year's is supposed to be loud. Fireworks, music, countdown. People celebrating the idea of a fresh start. But what if the new year begins with something watching you in the dark? What if you step outside for a peaceful walk, and when you turn around, there are footprints behind you that weren't there before? What if you go home and your house isn't the way you left it? Tonight on Fear Spiral, I'm going to tell you 3 winter stories. 3 nights that all started normal. A quiet New Year's walk. A routine overnight shift at a mountain ski resort. A long drive home through a snowstorm. But every single one of them ends the same way. With someone disappearing. With someone watching. And with one terrifying realization. Sometimes the danger isn't loud. It doesn't chase you. It doesn't scream. It just follows. And waits. In the first story, a man walks alone through fresh snow at 2 a.m. He notices a second set of tracks forming behind him, perfectly matching his path. When he gets home, something inside his house confirms his worst fear. In the second, an overnight worker at a ski resort hears unexplained noises, sees footprints in untouched snow, and watches his coworker vanish into the woods, while someone else watches from the trees. And in the final story, a blizzard, an isolated rest stop, a blocked bathroom door, and 2 strangers who smile just a little too wide. These aren't stories about monsters. They're about people. And sometimes that's worse. So turn the lights down. Lock your doors, and if it's snowing where you are right now, maybe don't look outside. Because once you notice something following you, you can't unsee it. This is Fear Spiral. Story 1. The footprints that followed me. New Year's Eve wasn't supposed to be memorable. I had already done the family thing for Christmas. By the time December 31st rolled around, I didn't have plans. No party, no friends going out. So I stayed home. A couple beers, TV on in the background, watching the Times Square celebration from the couch like millions of other people. By 2 a.m., though, I wasn't tired. I had been sitting all day, and the quiet outside felt inviting. It had started snowing earlier. Not heavy, just enough to dust the neighborhood in white. Something about it felt peaceful. I grabbed my jacket, gloves, and hat, and stepped outside. Immediately, I noticed how silent it was. Not just quiet, silent. No cars. No distant laughter from parties. No fireworks anymore. Just soft snow falling under streetlights. It felt calm, almost too calm. I started walking with no direction in mind, weaving through my neighborhood streets. I wasn't exactly sober, but I wasn't stumbling either, just relaxed. After a while, I'm not sure how long, I ended up at the park. The walking path hadn't been shoveled since earlier that morning, but there were maybe 2 inches of snow. Nothing serious. So I stepped onto the trail. At first, it felt nice. A change of scenery. Trees lining the path. The soft crunch of boots beneath me. Then I realized something. There were no lights on. Normally, small path lamps lined the trail, but that night, they were off. After a minute or 2 of walking into near darkness, I decided it wasn't worth it. I turned around. And that's when I saw them. Another set of footprints. Directly behind mine. Perfectly aligned. Close enough that whoever made them had to have been walking right behind me. My stomach dropped, because when I first walked in, there were no other tracks, and I hadn't heard anyone. When I saw the second set of footprints behind mine, I stopped walking. The snow was fresh enough that I could clearly see the depth of each print. Mine were slightly uneven from weaving around earlier. The ones behind me were steady, intentional, measured. They weren't overlapping mine. They weren't random. They weren't random. They were following me. Step for step. Close enough that if someone had reached forward, they could have touched my shoulder. I didn't hear breathing, didn't hear footsteps, didn't hear snow crunching behind me. Just wind. I slowly turned around. Nothing. The park was pitch black beyond the faint glow from the neighborhood street behind me. The trees formed a wall of shadow. For all I knew, someone could have been standing 10 feet away, and I wouldn't have seen them. I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe someone had walked behind me before I noticed. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe the alcohol was amplifying the fear. But that explanation fell apart when I looked closer. The tracks didn't continue back toward the entrance. They stopped, right where I was standing, then veered off the path, into the trees, into complete darkness. There was no trail there, no reason for someone to step off into that part of the park, and there were no return tracks, which meant one thing: whoever made them was still out there, watching. That peaceful feeling I had earlier, gone, replaced with something heavy pressing against my chest. I started walking back toward the neighborhood, trying not to run. Running would mean panic. Panic would mean admitting something was wrong. But I definitely walked faster. Every few seconds, I felt the urge to look back. I didn't. I told myself not to. If someone was there, I didn't want them to know I knew. By the time I reached the streetlights again, I felt slightly safer. Houses lined the road. Christmas lights still glowed on rooftops. Normal. Safe. I walked another 15 minutes before heading home. I didn't see anyone else outside. No movement. No cars. Eventually, I convinced myself it had been nothing. A weird coincidence. That's all. When I stepped inside my house, the warmth hit me immediately. I locked the door behind me. Something I usually did automatically. I took off my jacket and gloves and decided I'd shower, hoping it would make me tired enough to finally sleep. Halfway up the stairs, I froze. It was dark upstairs, completely dark. That doesn't sound terrifying on its own. But here's the thing. I leave lights on. Always. Especially during the holidays. And I hadn't been upstairs all day, which meant I never turned them off. I stood there for a few seconds, convincing myself I must have imagined leaving them on. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I misremembered. Still, my heart was beating harder now. I reached the top of the stairs and turned on the hallway light. Nothing looked out of place. The doors were all closed, just like usual. I walked to the first bedroom and opened the door. Empty. Second room. Empty bathroom. Empty. After checking each one, I closed the doors behind me. A small habit of mine. I like doors shut. It makes things feel orderly, controlled. When I finished checking the last room, I turned around to head back toward the stairs, and my stomach dropped so hard it felt like the floor disappeared. The first bedroom door, the one closest to the staircase, was wide open. Not cracked, not slightly ajar, wide open. I know I closed it. I remember the click of the handle. That's the moment I knew. Someone was inside my house. I couldn't hear movement, couldn't see anything from where I stood, but someone had to be in that room, or somewhere nearby. I called out, "Hello!" My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded small. I waited. No answer. My brain started racing through possibilities. Maybe they were still inside that room. Maybe they were downstairs. Maybe they were standing directly behind me right now. Every shadow felt alive. I took a step toward the open doorway. Then another. My heartbeat was so loud it drowned out everything else. I remember reaching the edge of the doorframe. I remember preparing to look inside. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the hallway floor. The light was still on. My head was pounding so badly I could barely focus. For a few seconds, I didn't know where I was. Then it hit me. The open door, the hallway, the footprints. I tried to sit up, but my vision blurred and faded in and out. I don't know how long I was out. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe less, maybe more, but someone had been close enough to knock me unconscious, and I had zero memory of it happening. No struggle, no sound, no face, just gone. I grabbed my phone and called 911. By the time police arrived, whoever had been there was long gone. No forced entry, no clear signs of theft. Just me, unconscious in my own hallway. The most disturbing part wasn't the attack. It was the missing memory. I likely saw their face. I probably stood inches away from them. I might have even recognized them. But it's like my brain erased it, locked it away, and I have never gotten it back. To this day, I still think about those footprints. How they stepped perfectly behind mine. How they stopped. How they went into the trees. And I can't help but wonder, were they already inside my house when I got home? Or did they follow me there? Story 2. The night Matthew disappeared. I work at a small ski resort in a mountain town. During peak season, it's busy, loud, packed with families, tourists, and late-night energy. But overnight, it's a different world. Empty hallways, dim emergency lights, wind rattling the walls. My job was mostly maintenance and cleaning. After a few break-ins months earlier, management adjusted schedules so 2 of us worked overnight. Technically, I wasn't alone, but it felt like I was. My coworker, Matthew, worked the opposite side of the resort. The property was split into 2 large sections connected by a long corridor. Sometimes we wouldn't see each other for days, even though we were on the same shift. He was older than me, quiet. We weren't friends, just coworkers. That night started normal. I clocked in and began cleaning the main lodge. Snow had been falling steadily outside, and by midnight, the mountain looked completely buried. About an hour into my shift, I heard something. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like someone lightly knocking on glass. I stopped what I was doing and walked toward the front windows. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I stepped closer. There were footprints in the snow. They went straight up to the window I was standing in front of, right up to the glass. Then they wrapped around the side of the building. There was no vehicle in the lot, no headlights, nothing. I threw on my coat and stepped outside to check. The footprints circled toward the back parking lot, which had already been plowed clean. And that's where they stopped. No continuation, no trail leading away. Just gone. I stood there for a moment, the wind biting through my jacket, trying to make sense of it. Eventually, I went back inside. Maybe it was someone curious. Maybe nothing. About 30 minutes later, I heard doors opening from the connecting corridor. Matthew stepped into my section. He looked off, confused, disturbed. He stared at me for a second and asked, "What are you doing?" The question caught me off guard. "Working," I said. He nodded slowly, but like the answer didn't register. "Everything okay?" I asked. He shook his head slightly, muttered something about being tired, and walked back toward his side. Before he left, I mentioned the footprints, asked if it was him. He said no, and that was it. He didn't elaborate, didn't ask questions, just left. The whole interaction stuck with me. About an hour later, a loud bang echoed through the corridor. It wasn't subtle. It sounded like a heavy door slamming, or something hitting the wall. I immediately went to check on him. The corridor was empty. I walked into his section of the resort. Matthew, no response. I searched the front area, then the storage rooms, then the rental desk. Nothing. As I moved toward the back, my stomach dropped. The rear exit door was wide open. Snow was blowing inside, and fresh footprints led away from the building, up the slope toward the ski lifts. There was no reason for Matthew to go out there, especially in the middle of the night, especially in that weather. I stepped outside and called his name. The wind swallowed my voice. The footprints continued up the hill, and then veered toward the tree line, toward the forest beyond the resort boundary. Toward the forest beyond the resort boundary. That's when something in my chest tightened. These might not be Matthew's footprints. I followed them part way up the slope. My boots sank deep into the snow. The higher I climbed, the darker it got. The resort lights didn't reach that far. And then movement. Far beyond the trees. A figure stepped into view. Still facing me. Even from a distance, I could tell it wasn't Matthew. It didn't move closer. It didn't wave. It just stood there, watching. I don't remember deciding to run. I just did. I stumbled back down the hill, nearly falling multiple times. I didn't look behind me. I didn't want to know if it followed. I slammed the back door shut and locked it, then ran to the front desk and called police. They were 30 minutes away. I hid in a storage closet with rental gear. Every creak sounded amplified. Every gust of wind felt intentional. About 10 minutes into waiting, I thought, I heard a door open somewhere in the building. But I didn't check. I wasn't going to wander those halls alone. When police finally arrived, they found something that made my blood run cold. Another set of footprints coming back from the woods. Toward the building. Toward the door. Whoever was out there had returned. Matthew was declared missing that night. There were no signs of struggle inside, no evidence explaining what happened. Once the tracks reached the forest, they were impossible to follow. For a while, I was questioned heavily. I was the last one to see him. Eventually, I was cleared. But Matthew was never found. And sometimes I still wonder, if I had walked further into those trees, would I have disappeared too? Story 3. The rest stop in the blizzard. 4 years ago, during the holidays, I drove 16 hours to surprise my parents in Montana. The drive back home was supposed to be simple. It wasn't. About 5 hours into the trip, a winter storm hit. Hard. Within minutes, visibility dropped. Snow covered the road. Wind shoved my car side to side. An emergency storm advisory came through on my phone. Then I lost service. I pulled into the nearest rest stop. It was small, isolated, surrounded by trees. Only one other car was parked there. It was already buried under snow. The storm intensified. A complete whiteout. After an hour of waiting, I decided to use the restroom. The building was warm inside, quiet, 2 bathroom doors. I pushed open the men's room. It cracked open a few inches, then pushed shut from the inside. I tried again. Same thing. It wasn't locked. It felt like someone was physically holding it closed. I froze. There hadn't been anyone in the lobby. No footsteps, no sound. I backed away. I didn't try the other restroom. Something felt wrong. I left. As I stepped outside, I heard the bathroom door swing open behind me. I didn't look back. I walked straight to my car. A few minutes later, I saw a shape emerging through the snow. A man, standing between the building and my car. He appeared to be on the phone, facing me. He slowly started pacing closer. Then I saw it clearly. He was staring directly at me. And he was smiling. Wide. Too wide. He walked to my window and tapped on the glass. Harder. Harder. Then another man ran from the building toward my car. That snapped me out of it. I threw the car in reverse. My tires spun in the snow. They were almost at my door. Then suddenly, traction. The car jolted backward. I shifted into drive. As I pulled away, the second man threw something at my windshield. It struck the glass and bounced off, leaving a deep crack across the center. I drove through the storm, through near zero visibility. Until I regained service, police arrived later. The men were gone, but the buried car remained. It didn't belong to either of them. It belonged to a missing traveler, a man who had pulled off the highway to rest. and was never seen again. To this day, I believe I arrived shortly after something terrible had already happened. One man keeping lookout, the other inside, blocking the door, waiting. And if I had forced my way in, I don't think I would have driven away. Winter has a way of hiding things. It softens sound. It buries tracks. It makes the world feel smaller, quieter, safer. But sometimes, that quiet isn't peace. It's cover. 3 different nights, 3 different locations, 3 completely unrelated situations. 3 completely unrelated situations, and yet they all share something deeply unsettling. Footprints that appear where they shouldn't. Doors opening when they were closed. Strangers watching without blinking. People vanishing without answers. In the first story, someone walked step for step behind a man in fresh snow, then somehow made it inside his home. Close enough to erase part of his memory. In the second, a coworker stepped out into the dark mountains and never stepped back. And in the third, 2 men waited inside a blizzard, calm, smiling, as if they'd done this before. No monsters, no ghosts, just people. And that's what makes it harder to shake, because people plan, people wait, people choose moments carefully. Moments when it's quiet, when visibility is low, when you're alone. And winter creates the perfect environment for all of that. What's even more disturbing isn't just what happened, it's what didn't happen. No arrests, no solid explanations, no closure, just missing pieces, missing memory, missing coworker, missing traveler, and unanswered questions that still echo years later. If there's one thing these stories prove, it's this: trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. If a door won't open, don't force it. If footprints appear behind you, don't convince yourself it's nothing. And if someone is smiling at you through a snowstorm, you don't owe them a conversation. You owe yourself safety, because danger doesn't always look aggressive. Sometimes it looks patient. Sometimes it looks patient. Sometimes it looks like it's just waiting for you to make one wrong decision. And maybe the most chilling part of all of this is knowing that somewhere out there, the person behind those footprints, the figure in the tree line, the men at that rest stop, are still out there, blending in, living normal lives while someone else tells their story years later. If you made it this far, thank you for stepping into the spiral tonight. If these stories gave you that uneasy feeling in your chest, that means you were listening closely. And that's exactly where fear lives. Thank you for spending your time here on Fear Spiral. If you enjoy real stories that linger long after they're over, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next descent. And before you go tonight, double-check your locks. Maybe glance at the windows. And if it's snowing where you are, listen carefully. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't hearing footsteps behind you. It's hearing nothing at all.